Paris woke up slowly that Sunday morning. Cold air, soft sunlight, the usual crowds wandering toward the Louvre with cameras and maps. Everything looked normal. Almost too normal. Nobody knew that in less than an hour, the world's most famous museum would be shaken by a robbery so bold, so unreal, that even investigators later said it felt like a movie scene, except it actually happened. At 9 a.m., a beat-up moving truck rolled up on the quieter side of the Louvre. Nothing suspicious. No tinted windows, no weapons hanging out, just a simple white truck with a mechanical basket lift bolted to its back. In Paris, these trucks are everywhere, moving furniture from those tall apartments with no elevators. So when four men stepped out wearing bright yellow vests, looking like construction workers, almost everyone ignored them. People walked past sipping coffee, drivers honked, the city didn't even blink. But inside those vests were not workers, they were thieves. And they had been planning this moment for months. They placed orange cones around the truck, acting like they were on official duty. One of them even held a clipboard to look professional. The truth? The truck was stolen. The uniforms were fake. And their plan relied on one simple thing. If people think you belong somewhere, they won't question you. By 9:30 a.m., the museum opened. 30 minutes of pure calm. Guards chatting, tourists flooding in, cameras flashing, children pointing at the glass pyramid outside. Nobody noticed the basket lift rising slowly on the southern wall of the museum, carrying two masked men upward like ghosts climbing the Louvre. As the lift moved higher, a cyclist passing by slowed down. Something felt off. Why were construction workers cutting into a window on a Sunday? And why were they wearing masks? He dialed emergency services, not knowing his call would be the very first warning that something was wrong. At the second floor balcony, the two thieves stepped off the lift. In front of them was an old window. Thick glass, reinforced, but not unbreakable. They pulled out small angle grinders. The museum was filled with quiet chatter, but in this one hallway, an unnatural metallic scream echoed through the walls. Tourists in the gallery froze. A guide turned around, confused. A guard walking nearby heard the noise and instantly knew this wasn't maintenance. This was a break-in. The thieves cut a perfect circle into the window and kicked it inward. Shattered glass rained onto the museum floor. Alarms blared. Guards sprinted. People started running, screaming, thinking it was a terror attack. The thieves didn't care. They were already inside, fast, focused, and fearless. They rushed toward two glass cases shining under white museum lights. Inside were pieces of history. Crowns, emeralds, sapphire sets, hundreds of years old. Priceless. Some belonged to queens, some to empresses, all symbols of French power. The thieves slammed their grinders against the display cases. Sparks flew, glass cracked. Tiny explosions burst with each hit. Two guards rushed in, but stopped when they saw the thieves wielding tools like weapons. Outnumbered, unarmed, and terrified, the guards backed away. In less than 2 minutes, the thieves ripped out 9 royal treasures and stuffed them into bags. Heavy jewels clinked against each other as history literally disappeared inside a backpack. Back at the window, they didn't hesitate. They jumped onto the basket lift, slid down, and sprinted toward 2 black motor scooters waiting on the sidewalk. The engines roared to life. In seconds, they were weaving through Paris streets, disappearing into traffic. Behind them, chaos. Tourists crying, guards shouting, workers trying to put out a small fire the thieves started to destroy evidence. They didn't even manage to burn the truck properly. The entire heist, one of the biggest museum robberies in French history, took 7 minutes. Not 7 hours, 7 minutes. Police arrived to a scene that felt like a nightmare. Broken glass everywhere, destroyed cases, a crown lying on the ground, one the thieves dropped and didn't bother to pick up. And scattered across the balcony were gloves, tools, and a helmet the thieves didn't even take with them. Mistakes. Small ones, but enough for investigators to start pulling on the first threads of a massive puzzle. The museum shut down. France went into shock. News channels called it a national humiliation. How could thieves break into the Louvre in broad daylight and vanish like smoke? But as the world pointed fingers, investigators quietly made their first discovery, a discovery that would lead them to the men behind this daring crime. As the smoke cleared from the chaos, investigators rushed to piece together the scale of the heist. The Louvre's security footage revealed the precision and audacity of the operation. Masked men, power tools in hand, moving through centuries of priceless artifacts as if they were ghosts in a building that should have been impregnable. DNA traces, fingerprints, and items left behind, including a helmet and the Empress Eugenie crown, became the first threads detectives could pull on. Within hours, a team of over 100 investigators from specialized units was mobilized, combing the museum, the surrounding streets, and all nearby CCTV cameras. Every detail, from the placement of the Mobile truck to the timing of the getaway scooters, was scrutinized. French officials were quick to respond publicly, condemning the heist and emphasizing both the cultural and historical loss. Interior Minister Laurent Nunez called it a major, highly organized operation, stressing that the stolen jewels were of immeasurable heritage value. President Emmanuel Macron added, "This is an attack on our history, an attack on the very identity of France." Yet even as outrage swept through Paris, the reality sank in. The thieves had vanished with millions of euros worth of crown jewels in less than 7 minutes. The stolen treasures were among France's most iconic, the sapphire set of Queen Marie Amélie and Queen Hortense, including a tiara, necklace, and earring, the emerald set of Empress Marie Louise, and pieces belonging to Empress Eugenie, including a tiara and a corsage brooch. Each artifact told the story of France's royal past, pieces worn in coronations, ceremonies, and diplomatic events. Centuries of history reduced to bags carried out a window. One piece, the crown of Empress Eugenie, was dropped during the escape and recovered damaged, a grim testament to the frantic flight of the robbers. The estimated value, 88 million euros, though officials agreed that no sum could truly capture the cultural loss. Questions immediately arose about how this could happen in a museum of such fame and reputation. The Louvre, with its centuries of history and architecture, had long been vulnerable to theft. Past incidents, from the 1911 theft of the Mona Lisa to a 1998 case where a painting was simply sliced out of its frame, demonstrated weaknesses that had never fully been resolved. A security audit conducted just months before the heist revealed outdated cameras, blind spots, and insufficient staffing. The very renovations meant to modernize the museum had ironically created the perfect cover for the intruders. Scaffolding, construction workers, and blocked corridors made it almost impossible to differentiate between legitimate staff and criminals disguised in yellow vests. The first breakthroughs came quickly. Within a week, 2 men were arrested, one stopped at Charles de Gaulle Airport attempting to flee the country, the other detained in northern Paris. Both matched DNA collected from the crime scene, confirming investigators' suspicions that, despite the speed and seeming perfection of the heist, the thieves had left behind trace evidence that would become their undoing. Over the following days, 5 more individuals were arrested, bringing the total to 7. Yet, even with multiple arrests, the stolen jewels remained missing, their fate uncertain. Experts weighed in on what might become of the loot. The most likely scenario, dismantling the jewelry and selling the raw materials on the black market, erasing any trace of history in exchange for cash. Some speculated that pieces could be held for ransom, a bargaining chip against the French government. Others feared a shadowy buyer, a private collector willing to harbor the crown jewels illegally, removing them forever from public view. Regardless of the method, time was critical. low. The longer the jewels remained untraceable, the higher the chance they would vanish permanently. Former jewel thieves and crime analysts noted the subtle mistakes that could work in France's favor. Abandoned tools, a helmet, and the crown dropped in haste were all potential sources of DNA evidence. Experts also suggested the possibility of an inside accomplice, someone who had intimate knowledge of the museum's schedule, security gaps, and the location of the most valuable pieces. Every detail pointed to meticulous planning, but also human error, and investigators knew they had to move fast. Even as arrests were made and evidence collected, the story of the 2025 Louvre heist was only beginning to unfold. French authorities mobilized elite units, including the Banditry Repression Brigade, BRB, and the Central Office for the Fight Against Cultural Goods Trafficking, OCBC. International experts, such as the Israeli CGI Group, were also called in, drawing on their experience with high-profile heists in Europe. Comparisons were quickly made to the 2019 Dresden Green Vault robbery in Germany, where power tools were used to breach security, and yet meticulous forensic work had eventually unraveled the crime. Investigators hoped a similar strategy could yield results in Paris, only faster, given the fragile nature of the stolen jewels. Experts feared the pieces might have already been dismantled and sold in fragments. Some analysts suggested that a mastermind could hold onto one or two pieces as leverage, negotiating a potential ransom. The specter of a shadowy private collector, someone willing to hide treasures that belong to an entire nation, lingered in every discussion. In Paris, cultural officials wrestled with a bitter truth. Decades of heritage and history could be irrevocably lost in the pursuit of profit. The Louvre's vulnerabilities were scrutinized with renewed intensity. Years of understaffing, insufficient camera coverage, and aging equipment had created an environment ripe for exploitation. Investigators also explored the possibility that this heist was part of a broader pattern of organized museum thefts in France. The September 2025 Natural History Museum robbery, where gold samples were stolen using similar tools, and the 2024 Hiron Museum heist suggested that gangs were systematically targeting high-value material rather than artistic significance. These crimes demonstrated a modern evolution in art theft. The focus had shifted from paintings and sculptures to jewelry, gold, and diamonds, items that could be dismantled, melted down, and erased from history forever. As forensic teams worked tirelessly, the police faced the race against time. Every passing day increased the likelihood that the stolen pieces would be irretrievably altered. Yet, the meticulous work of collecting fingerprints, analyzing DNA, cross-referencing stolen goods with prior thefts, and tracing communications between suspects slowly began to paint a clearer picture. Each breakthrough brought investigators closer to reconstructing not just the heist itself, but the network behind it, revealing a combination of audacity, desperation, and amateur mistakes. Even as France grappled with the shock of the heist, the world watched. Experts warned that the Louvre's loss could inspire similar crimes globally, showing how vulnerable even the most famous museums had become. The 2025 robbery, executed in under 7 minutes, would become a case study in both the evolution of art crime and the vital importance of security, staff vigilance, and forensic science. But for now, all eyes remained on Paris, where detectives, forensic teams, and international experts were locked in a tense battle to recover treasures stolen not just in value, but in history itself. The Louvre heist of October 19, 2025 would not fade from public memory easily. In the days following the robbery, the French police, cultural authorities, and international art crime specialists worked around the clock to untangle the web of audacity, oversight, and opportunity that had allowed 4 men to strip some of France's most precious jewels from its national museum in under 7 minutes. While investigators chased the suspects, the world's attention turned to the stolen treasures themselves. The sapphire and diamond tiaras, necklaces, and earrings once worn by French royalty were more than jewelry. They were symbols of a nation's imperial grandeur, tangible links to the lives of kings, queens, and empresses. Every gem told a story. Empress Marie Louise's emeralds, a gift from Napoleon, spoke of diplomacy, power, and the personal life of one of history's most enigmatic figures. Empress Eugenie's diamond-studded tiara reflected a period of opulence under Napoleon III, a time when Paris itself shimmered under gaslight and ambition. For French citizens, the robbery was not just a crime, it was a wound to the national identity. Television anchors recounted the chaos in the museum, tourists' confusion, and the immediate evacuation that left the Louvre eerily silent, a contrast to the usual crowds that surged beneath the glass pyramid. But even as authorities scrambled, parallels to other high-profile European heists became impossible to ignore. The 2019 Dresden Green Vault robbery came up repeatedly in meetings and press conferences. In both cases, thieves exploited a combination of inside knowledge, power tools, and vulnerabilities in old museum structures. Both left evidence behind, suggesting that the combination of speed and audacity often comes at a cost. Arthur Brand, the Dutch art detective, noted that incredible crimes often fail because criminals are human. They make mistakes. In Paris, that truth would prove essential. The arrests of 2 suspects within a week of the heist were a breakthrough, yet they only scratched the surface. Investigators traced their steps to the suburbs of Saint-Denis, uncovering a network that was surprisingly small but frighteningly bold. These were not professional international art thieves. They were young men from local communities, well acquainted with petty theft, but emboldened by opportunity and audacity. Experts described it as an amateur operation executed with a level of precision that most professionals would envy. Yet their inexperience showed in the trail of DNA, fingerprints, and dropped items they left behind. Beyond the Louvre itself, the heist cast a long shadow over museum security worldwide. Paris had long been aware of vulnerabilities in its cultural institutions, but the 2025 heist crystallized a universal truth. No museum, however famous, is immune to theft if human error, outdated technology, and chaos intersect. Renovation work at the Louvre, meant to modernize facilities and improve visitor experience, had inadvertently created cover for the criminals. Scaffolding, construction barriers, and moving equipment allowed the thieves to blend into the city's backdrop, exploiting centuries of architectural design originally intended for grandeur, not security. The 1911 Mona Lisa theft was often referenced, not as a comparison in scale, but as a reminder that cultural treasures have always attracted audacity. Vincenzo Peruggia, the Italian worker who stole the Mona Lisa, acted alone, driven by patriotism. The 2025 Louvre thieves were a team, motivated by material gain, demonstrating the evolution from romanticized art theft to modern, profit-driven heist. By early November 2025, the arrested suspects were facing a litany of charges: theft, organized robbery, conspiracy, and criminal collusion. Court proceedings revealed shocking details about how ordinary suburbs could produce audacious criminals capable of executing a billion-dollar plan in minutes. Some pleaded minimalist confessions, others remained silent. French prosecutors emphasized that despite arrests, the jewels themselves were still missing, highlighting a stark reality. The most valuable pieces of the heist might never be recovered. As of today, the Louvre remains open, welcoming visitors from around the globe. Its halls are filled with treasures both old and new, but the empty cases in the Galerie de Palan stand as silent witnesses to one of the most audacious crimes in modern history. The 2025 heist has left a permanent mark, not only on the museum, but on the broader understanding of art crime, security, and the lengths humans will go to possess beauty, power, and history.